Hello again, fourth graders, and welcome back to Math Workshop. Today we're going to be doing 4.12, and this lesson is all about multi-step multiplication number stories. That's a big mouthful, isn't it? But we see some key words in here that we really want to pay attention to. The first thing is that we're doing multiplication, so we know that most of the work that we'll do in these problems is going to require us to do multiplication, which is awesome because it'll give us a chance to practice our strategies for multiplication that we've learned so far, partitioning rectangles or partial product. And we also know that these are going to be number stories, which we're going to have to read more than one time to get all the information out of them that we need to solve. And the third thing is that these are going to require multiple steps. They're multi-step problems. So these are going to require patience, perseverance, hard work, and lots of scratch paper. So be prepared that the problems that you're going to try today are going to take a little bit of time and a little bit of effort, and you're going to have to go slow and do lots and lots of steps and double check your work as you go. So just be prepared that this kind of work is really, really advanced and you guys are totally prepared to do it. So the problems that you're going to see today are going to require you to do a couple of things. The first thing you're going to have to remember to do is that this is going to ask you to do estimations first. We talked a lot this year about how it's important to estimate first to see what your answer should be approximately. And then when you solve, you'll know that your answer makes sense because it's close to the answer that you got when you estimated. So when you see your journal work today, it's going to ask you to do estimation. And it's also going to ask you to write number models, which means equations with unknowns. So we've talked a lot about that before. An unknown is just a variable or a letter. So that represents the answer that we're going to get when we solve the equation that we create. And since these are multi-step problems, you're probably going to end up with more than one number sentence. So just be prepared that you're going to have to do that work today. Let's do one straight out of your journal together as practice, and then you're going to go off and try this on your own. So here's a problem that you're going to see in your journal. It looks pretty similar. So you can see that it's asking us for an estimate, and it's also asking us for number models. And then later on, it is going to ask us a little bit to explain ourselves if we think that our work makes sense. So let's read the problem one time just to get all the information, and then we'll go back and read it a second time to find all the numbers that we think we'll need that are important to our story. Aaliyah buys 4 cartons of eggs each month. Each carton contains 1 dozen eggs. How many eggs does Aaliyah buy in 2 years? Okay, let's go back and read this and make sure we understand all the information that's in the story. So Aaliyah buys 4 cartons of eggs each month. Well, each month sounds important because we know that the question is asking us how many eggs that she buys over a length of time. So we're going to need to know what that represents. So let's think. If she buys 4 cartons of eggs each month, that means that she buys 12 cartons, right? Because there are 12 months in 1 year. So I'm going to write the number 12 over on the side because each month tells me that I'm probably going to need to use the number 12. There are 12 months in 1 year. Each carton contains 1 dozen eggs. Okay, so 1 dozen eggs sounds important. That sounds like an amount. And I know that 1 dozen also means 12. So I'm going to write the number 12 over here on the side, and I'm going to circle it because 1 dozen means 12. And the question is asking us, how many eggs does Aaliyah buy in 2 years? Okay, so I'm going to circle the 2 because it sounds like that's pretty important. I know there are 12 months in 1 year, but the question is asking us how many she buys altogether in 2 years. So first we're going to have to find out how much she buys in 1 year and then use our knowledge of multiplication to find out how much that would be over the course of 2 years. Okay, so now we have to do some estimation. So I know that she buys 4 cartons of eggs each month. So I'm going to write the number 4. 4 seems like a pretty easy, friendly number. I don't think that that's too complicated. I could probably work with the number 4. So I think I'm going to leave 4 the way it is. It's not too big. And if I round it to 10, it's going to make my estimation way too far off. So let's just start with 4 and see what else we can make pretty easy. Okay. She buys 4 cartons of eggs each month. And I know that that means that she buys eggs 12 times in 1 year. 12 is not a very friendly number. So let's round that to 10. So if she buys 4 cartons and she does that 12 times in a year, let's just round that 12 to 10. We're going to round it, make a nice friendly number. And 12 is closer to 10, not to 20, so it makes sense to round down. Then there's this next part that says each carton of eggs that she buys contains 1 dozen eggs. So we're going to have to see, after we find out how many eggs she buys in 12 months, we then have to multiply that by how many eggs there are. So I'm going to put this in parentheses because I have to do this multiplication problem first, and I have another step. So I'm going to multiply again by 10. I'm rounding down because 12 is closer to 10 than it is to 20. And it's asking me how many eggs she buys, not how many cartons. So we need to pay attention to that as well. Now that's going to tell us how much she buys in 1 year. After I find out how much she buys in 1 year, there's another part to this, isn't it? Then I have to find out how many she buys in 2 years. So then my next number model is going to have to be whatever y is after I solve for y. Then I'm going to have to multiply that times 2, right? Because that means that I'm going to find out how many eggs she buys in 2 years. That is going to tell us how many eggs she buys altogether. So I'm going to make that a letter E. Now, normally you only want to have one variable. So as soon as I find out what y is, I'm going to plug that number in right here. That's not going to stay an unknown. I'm going to find out what that is, and then I'm going to be solving for a new unknown over here after I multiplied times 2. So I've got quite a lot of work to do. So let's get busy. So I know that I have to solve what's inside the multiplication. I'm sorry, I have to solve what's inside the parentheses first and then go from there. So I know that 4 times 10 is 40. And if I multiply 40 times 10, I'm going to remember my rule of doing my base problem first. 4 times 1 is 4. And then there are 2 zeros. So that should give me about 400. Okay, sounds okay. Now that I know what my y is, I'm going to turn my y into 400. And I'm going to solve for E now. So 400 times 200, 4 times 2 is 8. And there are 2 zeros. So E equals 800. So my answer somehow needs to come out to about 800 or so. So now that we've got our estimation, we need to solve for the real number problems, right? We have to solve the real numbers and get to the real bottom of it. So let's go. It wants us to first write number models for the real numbers instead of the estimation numbers, right? We have to change these numbers around to make them the real numbers out of the problem, and then we'll compare and see if we're on the right track. Okay, so we want to keep the number models pretty similar to what we did up here in our estimation. We just want to change out those numbers that we rounded to the real numbers. So we kept 4 the same. So I'm going to keep the number 4 right here. But remember, we rounded 10. The real number was actually 12. And so that's going to be our first equation that we're going to have to solve. Then, of course, we multiply that times, well, in the estimation we did 10, but that was because we were rounding down. The real number was 12. So we're going to do that times 12. And remember, that gave us y. Then we're going to have another problem over here, remember, y. So I'm actually going to leave a blank right here because remember, we don't really want to have two variables in a problem. We don't want to have two unknowns. So we're going to plug that in as soon as we know it, and we're going to multiply that times 2 because there were 2 years, and that's going to equal eggs. How many eggs Aliyah buys in 2 years? All right, let's do the work of solving. So I'm actually going to try that partial product method that we learned, and I'm going to see if I can get really, really good at it. So let's see. 4 times 12. And we draw the line down the side, remember? And then we write a smaller multiplication problem for each place value. So 4 times 2 is the ones place, equals 8. And then 4 times not 1, it's really 4 times 10 because it's in the tens place, and that equals 40. And when I add 40 plus 8, I get 48. Okay, now I'm going to take this problem, or this answer, 48, and I'm going to do the next part of my equation. I'm going to multiply 48 times 12. Let's try partial product again. So we're going to have quite a few problems. 2 times 8, we're going to do the ones place first. 2 times, not 4, because it's in the tens place, it's really 2 times 40 equals 80. Now we're all done with the 2, so we can pretend it's not there anymore. And we'll come over to this digit. It's in the tens place, though. So it's really 10 times 8 is 80. And then this one, 10 times, it's not really 4, it's in the tens place, so it's 10 times 40. Use what you know about base answers. 1 times 4 is 4, and there are 2 zeros. Now let's add all those up and see what we get. 6, 16, 17, carry the 1, 4 plus 1 is 5. So y equals 576. Now I can fill that in to do my next problem over here, right? That was what was missing. So 576 is how many eggs she bought in 1 year, but the problem is asking us how many she buys in 2 years. So we have to multiply 576 times 2 to find out E, the unknown E, how many eggs she bought. So now let's try that work. 576 times 2. So the first problem that I see is in the ones place. 2 times 6 equals 12. 2 times, not 7, it's in the tens place, so it's really 70 equals 14 plus 1 0. And the next problem is 2 times 5 is in the hundreds place, so it's really 500. 2 zeros, and 2 times 5 is 10. So now let's add all that up together. 2 plus 0 plus 0, 4 plus 1. I'm going to double check my work here because all my numbers are not in order here. Yep, okay. 5. 1 plus 0 is 1. 1 plus 0 is 1. 1,152 equals E. Now, the next question is, in your journal, they're going to ask you, does your answer make sense? And our answer is reasonable, and our answer does make sense because our estimation is close to our real answer. The reason is because when we rounded, we made sure that we rounded down. So we know that this estimation is going to be much lower than the real answer, because remember, we rounded down. We rounded 12 down to 10. And so this answer is absolutely reasonable when we plug in the real numbers. It makes sense. Our estimation is close to our real answer. So friends, today, look and see. I mean, just you can see by the look of my paper, I had to do so much multiplication. I had to do so many individual smaller multiplication problems. I needed tons of scratch paper so that I could work on my multiplication problems and do all my addition. I had to use number models with unknowns. There's a lot to process here. So as you go forward today, trying 4.12, make sure that you've got everything you need, including lots of scratch paper, and make sure that you read the problem 2 times to make sure that you really understand what the question is asking you, and that you do that really tricky estimation work to see if your answer makes sense. Ready to try it on your own? Off you go, 4th graders.